Welcome back to the Diary of the CFO podcast. Today, I'm so delighted to have with me John Glasgow. He is the CEO and founder of Campfire, which is a modern accounting platform for mid-sized tech companies. Prior to that, he was a top finance leader at Bill.com and Adobe. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you so much for having me, Wasi. I'm really excited to be here and excited to hopefully add some value or share some fun facts and insights with some folks listening today.
Of course, especially for you being a finance person now, the CEO and founder of Campfire. So, why don't you tell us about your journey, the story behind how you find yourself where you are now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think about it a lot, and everyone asks. And I was a finance exec at about 100 employee company. We were really struggling with our accounting software at the time, and talked to the team, and we had kind of concluded there wasn't really anything out there that felt like it was built for us. We went on to get acquired by Bill.com for about $600 million. It wasn't an accounting software company itself. It was
Okay.
invoicing software for businesses called Invoice to Go. We got acquired by Bill.com for $600 million. And that was a great experience. But once we got acquired, my largest partners, because I went on to lead partnerships there, partners were the accounting software ledgers on the small business and mid-market side. Saw that this problem we had at 100 employees was actually widespread throughout other finance and accounting teams. So really went through Y Combinator, the startup accelerator, to build the accounting software I wish we were on. And so that's Campfire. And we now have lots of customers coming to us from these solutions I was frustrated with. And when I meet with someone and they tell me, here's all the pain points we're having, and I tell them, I was you. I'm coming from, I know your pain. And that's really helped us build the product in the right way because I was literally in their shoes. That's the
Wow.
founding story.
But compared to a lot of us, for example, we have those pain points, but we don't necessarily go and create something new. So, was there something that clicked for you, maybe a mentor or something you saw that made you do that jump?
It's a great question. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. 15, maybe more years ago now, I have an identical twin brother. Him and I started a company. It was brief, but he actually went on to be a solo founder about 7 years ago and went on to build a really big, successful business. And kind of watching him along his journey inspired me in many ways to go take the leap. We joke we have the founder DNA, we have the same DNA, but that was one of the inspirations for me to go solve this problem. And I had a really difficult decision to make. It was the same month my firstborn daughter was born, accepted into the Y Combinator Startup Accelerator. And I had to decide, leave my big company job. I was reporting directly to the CFO at a large public company, embark on this journey with a much smaller salary parental leave isn't as cushy when you're at
Oh,
this
yeah.
business. And so it was a big high conviction move for me, but it also gave me clarity that if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right because I have a lot on the line here. And so
Wow.
it's being really executing and focused. And so I've kind of divided my time now of there's family time, my wife and dog, and then there's work time. And I've had to make some sacrifices and, hobbies and some other fun stuff that I used to do. I tell my wife that, Campfire is my hobby. I love coming into work. I love my job. I was okay kind of offloading some of the other hobbies I had when I worked at a big company. My new hobby.
Oh, that's awesome. So you have an identical twin, a supporting wife, because she said, okay, go. Even though we have a baby here now, probably two now. So a picture lately on LinkedIn.
I have a 1 month old, another daughter. Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And that's good to remember, right? Because we have life outside of our career and how it helps our professional careers. So Does your identical brother pitch for you too, or like how did he help you in your? Because it must help to be a founder and have somebody that just look like you. I'm just curious.
Yeah, when I'm going through things on our journey, he's been through it all because they're further along, like I said. So, well, my silent kind of co-founder is my wife, and silent is obviously not an official capacity, just office. But when I bring problems home, when I bring the wins and the losses home to her, part of the journey. And you make a good point, like all of us, whether you're a founder or otherwise, we all have support networks. We all have people around us, helping us, what I call like your personal board, that in your own life, you have your personal board. And those are critical people, whether it's family, friends, or just like work mentors. These are critical people for just like any board on any critical for the success.
Nice, nice. And then within your finance career, what are some of the things that you felt really help you make the switch to be founder now, to create your own company, addressing the pain point that you had as a finance and accounting professional?
Yeah. Outside of like the product development pieces, we talk through a lot of it, certainly around like, I manage our fundraising model, I manage our operating plan. I've learned a lot about like forecasting. Yes, you want to try and get the forecast right, but understanding like the key levers in a business, has been really helpful for me of like, if this input equals this output, thinking of like a financial modeling way of, operating leverage and gross margin. And maybe you don't need to solve for these things now, but even whether I'm raising capital or whether I'm just thinking about like the long-term path for the company, an end state can look like from like like a financial operating perspective, and like how I'm going to get to that end state has certainly been an area that's been helpful. Being really thoughtful and scrappy financially and how we run and operate, just because, like on with our burn, and then also like dealing with investors and partners, and even like I ran a lot of the pricing for one of Adobe's products when I was in finance. When we were building out our pricing plan at Campfire, I had some great experience there on like pricing KPIs and key levers that I should be thinking about from a pricing and packaging perspective. So yeah, those were a couple that really stood out, beyond just being able to like tell a story with numbers and being able to prospect a customer or an investor and a new employee. One key part of finance, as better than anyone, is like being able to tell a story with numbers. And that's,
Yes. And I think we sometimes get stuck on being the numbers person,
yeah.
right? So how do you evolve from that in your career?
One of the hardest things for me, and this is a very tactical one, is I used to always insist on a PC. I went to a company, there was 100 people, and they sent me a Mac because everyone has a Mac there. And I just sent it back. Excel junkie. I love Excel. My keyboard shortcuts. I don't need a Mac. But part of my evolution, my next role, actually 2 roles later, was now as a founder, I got a Mac, not as good in Excel anymore. And part of this was being okay that I need to shift from specialist to generalist. Like the further up you go, the less technically proficient you are at a very specific task. And so for me, a lot of it was letting go, and letting go of my depth of Excel was something I had to do. It was just accepting that, now I'm typing and using my mouse in Excel these days. But part of that was an evolution of me into a role that being amazing at Excel is no longer required. And that's just like a microcosm of kind of things I've had to adjust.
But how can someone like force themselves out of it, even though they're still in the role that deeply involve Excel? Like how can they either increase their visibility or improve their storytelling? Or how can they do it when a lot of their role is still, you're going to look at a lot of spreadsheets?
Yeah. My big push for finance and accounting folks these days is like find tasks that are very repetitive in nature and automate them. And that will, like, maybe you're doing data entry, like you're manually creating an invoice. I was doing a lot of repetitive Excel tasks when I was in finance. Is there a tool or even a macro or whatever version of it is for you, automate some of this, and then that essentially gives you a promotion in your own way. There's maybe there's software that's doing the task instead of Excel. Software's doing it, you're freeing yourself up to focus on more strategic work. One area, especially with, like, everyone's talking about AI. We all need to reinvent ourselves in an AI world. And part of that is like AI is going to take over some of these tasks that are very repetitive in nature. Stay relevant, it's evolving yourself and your skill set. So I think it's mainly just pushing yourself. The other thing I tell people is whenever I used to present, I used to prepare, a lot of work for like financial models and forecasts. And I started to ask, can I be in the meeting when it's presented? And part of that, and you need to, whether it's the board meeting or for you, it could just be like your finance weekly meeting that maybe you're not invited to the CFO weekly meeting yet. Whatever meeting that is that you're preparing work for, that you're not allowed to attend, continue to push thoughtfully and gently, like to be there and pitch yourself. And what I would pitch myself was like, hey, what if you get a question you can't answer that's super technical? I'll just be on mute and you can just call on me and I'll just help you out, or I offer to take notes for people in the meeting for you. You don't need to focus and take notes. And that allowed me to not only be more visible, but also helped pull me kind of out of the day-to-day work, and then also get me into more of that, like, and then and then I was attending more regularly, and then I would start to have like opinions in the meetings. And so part of this was me pushing myself to evolve on how I think and operate. But the number one thing is just letting go.
That's a great hack, though. I wish I had that earlier in my career. Like you said, if you prepared one slide in a multiple deck, be the one saying, "Oh, can I present that one thing?"
Yep.
That's very neat. And going back to what you said about AI, right? And how AI will automate a lot of things and how we all worried about AI. Your solution has AI. Campfire has AI built in. So what are some of the pain points that you feel you automated through that solution first? And what are other things that automation will allow finance and accounting teams to do?
Yeah, it's a great question. The first things we're starting with is the ones that I was mentioning around, like repetitive work, to be like bank reconciliations or transaction matching, or it's like things that are very structured in nature and over again. I think spreadsheets will always have a part in finance and accounting, but if it's repetitive task in a spreadsheet, I'd like to think we can get it and offload it to AI. It would be more for like an ad hoc budget or a one-off, blank workbook. You got to whip something up, and narrowing the spreadsheet usage for non-repetition. And so that's where AI is today. Some of the areas that we're really excited about is we have a product called Ember that sits on top of all of your financial data. And it's just like ChatGPT. You can query your data, like, show me customer contracts up for renewal this month, or can you look for missing prepaids, or help build a Q1 budget, Q4 historicals, and assume some seasonality off of prior Q1. And I've been pleasantly surprised at how good it has been, but most people, rightfully so, don't trust AI yet, and never will, because just like anyone else on your team, you got to like review its work. It needs to be auditable. You need to understand how it got to the conclusion. And you need to be able to like export it to Excel, right? Because we're all finance people, and then tweak
it. I need that button, export to Excel.
There's my download button. And so we've been very thoughtful of like, it's not a black box. It's auditable. It shows its work. It pulls the sources and it links to all its sources, and it's downloadable. We've been asking people to think of AI as a member of your team. You give it feedback like someone on your team. It gets better as you learn how to work with it. and you check its work just like anyone else. Like I would never take someone's work from my team and present it to the board. Yeah, I'd reversed. All the same principles would apply to AI, and that's helping people rethink about AI, I think, in a more appropriate manner, allowing them to push more tasks to the AI.
That's nice. And I like the practical use cases you already have. And then the next step would be yes. Sometimes we're like, yes, that's a great use case. How do I bring it to my company? How do I bring it to my team? Like, how do you convince people to move through change? How do you lead digital transformations? Because you've done it when you were in finance and you know how hard it is sometimes to
Yeah.
push us through change. Any insights?
I think they need to be in the right mindset. I don't know if I can always disabuse someone of their view of the world. We are seeing something. I saw a stat from McKinsey this week that of all of the functions within a company, finance and accounting ranks like ninth out of 11th in terms of AI adoption. So we're almost in last. We're not in last, but we're almost in last. There's valid reasons for it, mainly around like tolerance for error is zero, right? You can't have incorrect numbers, right? That's table stakes. And we talked about the auditability and everything else. There's a reason they've been slow to adopt, but we are seeing more board mandates mandating AI on the company. Accounting teams have felt they haven't had any tools that have really been thoughtfully built for them to implement AI. Like we see here at Campfire, engineering AI is heavily used by every engineer at Campfire. Our sales and marketing team heavily uses AI. Finance and accounting teams are a couple years behind. And for the reasons I stated, that makes a lot of sense. As the tools solve for those problems, we're seeing not only the board mandate, but people say, I'm tired of manually creating 1,000 invoices for a 1 week period of every month. I just want someone to do it for me. I want to give myself a promotion. And that's where we're also seeing so like bottoms up as opposed to tops down from the board.
Okay, okay. And now, in terms of actually bringing it to a function, because you felt the pain we have in typical finance and accounting, right? It feels like the business is having all these great discussions, they're making all these great plans, and we're the last one to know about it. And we have to catch up, right? So, even with AI, right? Like, how can we use AI to help us bridge that gap? Right? Because I feel sometimes like it's almost like sales and product, right? Sales is like, yeah, we can do it, and product is like, wait, what did you just sell? I feel like accounting has the same thing with the business overall.
It's hard. When I was, in finance, they would, like the sales team would sell a deal that we had no way of visualizing from like, not only the rev rec policy for it, but also how do we even handle like, how do we even track usage from how do we even know what to bill somebody? Yeah. Finance and accounting, the last to find out about a new go to market, a new geo. It's super frustrating. Part of this isn't going to solve it. I can't solve it for you. The one thing helpful was I had one slide that I made and I said, here's my charter. And I went around to each business unit and I presented to them, here's my charter. Here's what I do. Here's what you can use me for. And here's maybe where you should not use me. And that helped educate them on when they went to do a new pricing or a new market, maybe I pitched them well. And I would usually a little sales pitch like, hey, if you include me, I can help you like build this correctly, or we can like make sure it gets done. So then if you sell it once, it's not no the second time. Cause like they'll be like, oh, we sold this deal. And you're like, okay, we can't do it again. But if you involve me early, maybe we can scale it and we can actually have something that does work long term. So part of that, again, I can't solve for it, but part of this is just like the evangelizing of your role. And when is the only advice I can give, other than there's a lot of bad actors out there that are going to do, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yes, but that's a great one though. It's part of, being a good business partner, you saying this is this is when you need to involve the team. This is when I should be involved. And I think it definitely makes things better when you are involving everyone from the start rather than at the end, because then I feel like we get all the pushback of these accounting and finance people again. Here they are saying no.
I know it's hard because everyone thinks of you like a CF no, and it's not about no, but it's like let's be thoughtful about it, and
Yes.
I would always remind folks when they ask for something and I was ready to say no. I'd always think like I would tell them we have the same desired outcome here. I want you to be successful. Let's find a way for you to be successful, even if it means like a different budget than what you were expecting, a different head count than you were expecting. Um, but we have common shared desired outcomes is how I would start the meeting.
Yes, and that's a great way to start, especially when you think about finance and accounting being more of business partners. And I think we don't realize soon enough in our careers that we need to be business partners, that we are in this together. What are some of the things you would tell the young generation of finance leaders? How can they be better prepared in this evolving role of finance?
It's moving so fast. It's hard to tell
Yes.
people. Someone was even telling me the other day, like, because as you know, I have two young children. People are saying, like, are they even going to go to college? And things are moving so fast that it's so hard to tell. But my advice for folks is where you can be helpful is like the kind of your managers and everyone's going to look to you to bring modern solutions, to bring modern ideas, modern ways of doing things. Like I used to be on a personal level, I used to be up on all the social networks. Like I've still have never been on TikTok now, and I don't know. There's probably another
I'm
TikTok.
not on TikTok either, so that's two of us.
There's the newer versions of TikToks now, but like I look to the younger generations, and I know my nieces and nephews. It's college that like, what's the hot tool? What's new? What's relevant? That's what you can bring ideas and fresh ways of doing things. And you can be when the board mandate arrives to like, AI needs to be implemented within finance, you can be the one that says, hey, I just went and demoed 10 AI tools. Here's two I like. And you can help deliver, on uniquely in ways that maybe other folks within the organization can't. So that's your secret weapon.
Being that change agent, yes. And leading change too. And I feel like we don't talk about it much, but how the project that you lead in your careers are usually the one that will accelerate your career, right? Like you doing the same thing every day doesn't really help, but it feels like it's the project, the other stuff you do, that tends to, if I can say, add the spices to your career. So can you maybe speak of any exciting project you led? How did it go and how did you really help you in your career?
It's a great question. And before I answer that, one piece of advice that's related to this question and the last question is people always tell me, hey, I'm starting to look for a new role. I found the higher up you go in your career, the more the role is going to be filled by someone is going to get you the job that you already worked with. And so you're interviewing for your next role every day in your current role is what I tell them. Is I spent at Adobe, I was strategic finance. I spent a ton of time on this really large project and it ended up having a great outcome. And my manager went on to be the CEO of Invoice to Go. How transformative I was for his team at Adobe that he brought me to come be an executive at Invoice to Go. So I think like building your resume through the real interactions you have. I tell everyone your current role is going to get you your next role, and it's going to be someone that gets promoted internally or externally that's going to take you with them. And that is how I found a few roles. I think the one that was the most transformative was probably when we were when I was at Invoice to Go doing corporate development and finance and partnerships. When I was tasked with either like going to raise like $100 million Series D, and we got some great term sheets there. This is my first time raising like large amounts of capital, so I was certainly like learning a lot as I went. And then also like exploring a sale of the company, and we ended up getting some great offers on both sides for the sale and the fundraise. And so kind of my capstone project was presenting to the board on both options, like blue pill, raise 100 million and double down, or sell the entire company to a great buyer and outcome. And we ended up choosing the sale route. And so then the delivery and execution of the project was between signing and closing, and then even like some post closing integration work was probably the capstone project of my career up until I went and started Campfire and became a CEO. So that one certainly stands out to me.
Oh, yeah. And it's definitely in line with what you had to do to start your own career, right? Your own company, I should say. Red pill or blue pill, do I go for it? And all the fundraising involved and the presentation involved, I still think maybe your identical brother is helping. Maybe now I want to meet him, but it looks like it's amazing, though, don't you think? How the things we do in our career, whether intentionally or not, help us in the long term.
Yes. Yeah. On a personal level, I mean, people don't realize like being a CEO, it's really the biggest sales job at the company. I'm selling new hires, I'm selling customers, I'm selling investors, I'm convincing people this is a place to be. I'm the face of me. And so, in finance, when I was out fundraising, I was selling why you should invest $100 million in us. When we were being acquired, I was out using slides and numbers to tell the story. This is how I sold. But at the end of the day, being a CFO is still a sales role. You're convincing people on your team. You're convincing just about everybody to deploy capital and come join you. And so, whatever it is, the further up you go, the more convincing people to do things becomes part of it. And that certainly was foundational in this launch point and to starting Campfire as well.
Good for you. And it's a great reminder. I should have probably taken sales courses now. Like like you said, at this level, a lot of what you do is sales. I have a good friend. She was an audit partner, and she was like, now that I'm a partner, I'm in sales. And everybody that I speak to at that executive level, we all feel like we salespeople.
Yeah, yeah, it is so true. And even as an accountant, it's through every role in some way. Getting people to align to your view on things. There's a million books on that. Effective of the role, the higher you go, the more relevant that becomes.
Yes. And what are some of you, maybe book recommendation or courses, newsletter, do you recommend for somebody trying to build those sales skills? Because I do believe that at some point in your career, you end up really being in sales.
Yeah, honestly, the number one thing, and I can certainly make some book recommendations outside of sales too. I found is all the salespeople, like you can just watch like an actual person's. There's a lot of books out there, but one that I found most helpful was actually is if you know someone in sales, almost all of their calls are recorded these days because they're on sales software that records their call. Ask you call recordings. You're a real kind of sale in seat of someone that's actually out selling today, but it doesn't actually sound like a sales pitch. It's deeply understanding problems, solutions to deeply understand a problem. And that is like good sales doesn't feel like sales. Fundraising, I'm getting them super excited about taking on incumbents, and so it's like solving problems and bringing solutions. But one thing like udemy.com, Coursera, uh, part-time professor. So a lot of those universities have online classes now that are free or low cost. Going on and signing up for some classes. I think, a sales class. There's the book, Never Split Lunch, I think is what it's called. Never Split the Bill, excuse me.
Never split the bill. Okay.
Never Split the Bill. There's some good business books. I like my favorite books I don't really read anymore, given the whole family and work thing I mentioned earlier. When I was reading, I used to really like biographies of business people. The founder of Nike, Phil Knight, Shoe Dog. There's Ride of a Lifetime, which is the Disney CEO story, Bob Iger. And so those just like really now what I mainly learn through is podcasts. So in the car,
Okay.
I drop my daughter off on the way to work, and I listen to a podcast. Once I drop her off between her being dropped, because her and I chat, and then I drop her off, and then I listen to podcasts. So there's a lot of good business ones. There's some sales ones out there. One on the sales side is called 30 Minutes to President's Club. It's a little more tactical for actual sales, but and then I listen to a lot of tech and AI and finance podcasts just to stay sharp.
Yes, I love it. Just to stay sharp, just that alone. I feel like it's something that we should all have to do, like all plan to do, because, like you said earlier, everything is moving so fast. Like, how do you stay sharp when you have two kids and a growing business and all these other things? For me, too, it's mostly through podcasts the same. I don't read as much as I used to, so I have to find other ways. I subscribe to Masterclass,
Okay.
so I get to, because I was introduced to it, flying in Delta. I was like, oh, what is Masterclass? And I started watching their shows, but you realize that you have to learn on the go.
Yeah, that's a great way. Yeah, and whether you're on an airplane or you're driving or on public transit, um, catching a little. But it's also important, like to just like decompress too. Way into work, I'll listen to a podcast. On the way home, I really try. Sometimes I'll catch up with people on a call, but I really try and just listen to music on the way home. Try and clear my head. One of the hardest things I have opening up a little bit here is like turning off work when I get home. It's like you bring work home with you. You know, kids are excited to see you. You really want to focus on the family, but shutting off the big, meeting you had or the big win or loss. And so trying to use music or something during my commute home has been something I'm really trying to do to allow me to transition to home life so I can really be present with my family.
That's a good one, because I feel like it's harder when you are working remote. So I feel like when I was driving to the office, it gave me time to decompress a bit. By the time I was home, I
Mhm.
was putting music like in my ears a little too loud sometimes, but it got me like, okay, okay, I'm going home. And then going to work as well. But then I feel like being remote, it's kind of tough, because your bedroom is down here and your office is here. So how do you feel about this remote hybrid situation, and how we can actually help you stop bringing work to home?
Yeah. So I used to be remote at Campfire. We're 5 days a week in office. You can see behind me there's office buildings. I'm downtown. Um, I think coming out of Y Combinator, they gave us some very strong advice that kind of the early formative stages of a company, having the team in person just allows like the highest level of cohesion and velocity and operating as one. And so that's the approach we've taken so far. I certainly see a lot of amazing businesses get built in a remote fashion from day zero, and I'm not saying you can't. What I really looked for in Campfire was like what I call tailwinds and headwinds, which is like, and it's like, how can I create as many tailwinds for our success as possible? Thing to people much smarter than me, at Y Combinator, they have thousands of startups in the portfolio, just heeding their advice on that to build in person. My wife's remote. I miss working on the couch with my dog on my lap. It's a big investment to be here. I do think as companies scale, and Campfire, we will be more remote as we scale, just because you need people around the world and you need offices in other places for global coverage. So it's coming. And as we have the infrastructure to support people in hybrid and remote places, we're certainly going to like go that way. But right now, there's no real training. There's no real, we don't have a huge onboarding. You kind of show up to work and you listen to a lot of conversations in the room and tap on someone's shoulder when you have a quick question. We have no internal meetings at Campfire, other than one 15-minute meeting a week. It's just, what are you gonna ship this week? That's the one question. And then you just start shipping. And that's what you spend all week on. And so we've removed some of the cohesion that you get that's required of being in a remote world. And again, you can be super successful remote, but we've decided to go for every tailwind we can.
And I feel like it makes sense from when I look at, my own career. Probably your career was the same. When you started out your career, you were meeting people, and it's amazing when I look back how much I learned from those coffee chat, like break room, and you hear something, and you're able to connect. And I feel like early in your career, it does help, like you said, in the early stage to be in connection with people. And then as you grow, you know what you're doing. You
Yes.
probably understand better how things are, and you can do it remotely.
I think that's a good point. I was fortunate early in my career. I was at places that we were all going in. And so there was a lot of I think additional training. It's more around the edge. Like if you have a really important question, obviously you're going to ask in a remote world. You hear someone solve a problem in a way you hadn't thought of this with them. Or you will ask the question that maybe you wouldn't ask if you had to hop on a Zoom to ask it. So there's a lower barrier for everything. But I completely agree, whether you're at a larger company or whether you're more experienced in your career, I think remote can make a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I think eventually we'll probably get to hybrid, because I think there is benefits in having some type of human connection still. But we'll see. We'll see where the world takes us and where AI is taking us.
Try
If
to
we'll
solve.
all be roaming around or floating around in cars.
Now, I mean, now they're talking about robotic AI, and it's we got the self-driving here in San Francisco. There's self-driving cars with nobody in them driving
I
all over.
saw them. I freaked out because I used to work for a company headquartered in San Francisco, and I was like, "What is this?"
Yeah, yeah, no driver at all. And I think that's kind of a preview into where I see some of the finance and accounting going on these simpler tasks. There's going to be no driver at all. One interesting, I know you're a CPA. One interesting thing we think about is separation of duties from a task, from an accounting perspective, is like for an audit. Obviously, you want separation of duties on a work being, but can the AI be actually one of the individuals either reviewing or performing the work from an audit standpoint? Or is actually stamping that Ember completed the task, and as the actual separation of duties with human and AI, or reviewing, my work on things I've done, will the audit world start to get comfortable? Where does the liability sit? These are all interesting things that are coming as AI starts to take over more of the task, but you still need everything to be audited, right? And so,
Yes, and it will be like the example you gave of separation of duties, especially for smaller companies. Sometimes everything is done by one person, but as you mentioned earlier, if AI is a team member, you just enlarge your capacity.
no, it's exactly it. Like I said earlier, everyone gets a promotion. That's kind of our pitch. We're really not focused on replacing everybody. I truly believe that as long as you evolve yourself and how you think and operate, there's for a very long time, if not never, there's a lot of accounting and finance that'll never get replaced by AI. So like we talked about earlier, continue to modernize and evolve yourself and your skills, and that's the best way to stay relevant in this rapidly evolving world.
Wow. Thank you so much, John, for being on the show. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome. I was honestly honored to be on. Follow your content and here, and hopefully folks found some value. If anyone wants to ping me, they can drop me an email, john@meetcampfire.com. I'm on LinkedIn. And yeah, thanks again for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. And that's it for today's episode of The Diary of a CFO. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like, review, subscribe, and share with others. Our website is thediaryofacfo.com. That's where you can find all the episodes. access all the guest profiles, see their bios, and their social media links. It is also the place where you can apply to be a guest on the podcast and have information about how you can sponsor the show. As always, if there is any topic you would like me to cover in the future, just email me at ask@thediaryofacfo.com. Again, the email is ask@thediaryofacfo.com. See you soon.